Hi there, it's 8 a.m. by the clock. That means it's time for the Breakfast Club. And this Thursday morning, what do we have for everybody, Toya?
Today is World Theatre Day, but we're actually bringing them Theatre Day with a twist.
So, we thought theatre needs to move beyond the stage. It needs to go into our everyday. So that means, how is theatre being used today for, say, therapy? How are corporates doing theatre readings, play readings, etc.? How is that turning out and mixing up in their world of Excel sheets? Also, how are students taking theatre now? And why are these classes being propagated about? What does it unlock in your brain, in your personality, in your mind? This very, very fascinating chat is coming up on the program today.
Later on the show, we also have a Southern star. We don't want to tease her too much, but she's someone who has built theatre, film centres down south, and we'll be speaking to her to bring you that real theatre touch right here. But let's go straight into all of the headlines first. First up, as we promised, we're celebrating World Theatre Day right here on The Breakfast Club. We're going to be talking about how theatre can be used to speak, to feel, to heal, and then obviously to repeat that process into the next day. It's where the stage meets self, and in the world's noise, we're going to be talking about how theatre teaches one to find their own voice.
Also on the program, the woman behind the frame, actor, curator, the force. We're looking at the actor-director Shylaja Chetlur. Beyond performing, she's also building live experiences, stage stories. And what exactly is following all this conviction behind the camera? She's our person of interest.
And after that, we bring you this exclusive conversation. Hemkant Foundation's Hartirath Singh in exclusive chat with Anand Narsimhan. My struggle was real, but my father stood by me. He talks about building compassion without a roadmap. He says service isn't a trend, it's a way of life. World Theatre Day is a celebration of theatre in each of our lives. This year's global theme is Theatre and a Culture of Peace, and it couldn't be more relevant. Because when you really think about it, theatre isn't just about applause, it's about awareness. It isn't just about acting, it's about bringing in empathy, cultivating empathy with a character that you don't know. It shapes young minds, it softens hardened hearts, it can spark confidence in a shy school kid.
There is an entire field of emotional intelligence and a high-powered CEO would feel if they were to experience theatre. Theatre builds bridges within and between us as well. It helps children articulate their truth and it helps adults reconnect with it. It's one of the most powerful tools today we have for building mental resilience and healing from within. So, on the Breakfast Club this morning, we are moving beyond the stage. We're taking theatre beyond that and understanding how it's truly transforming lives, personalities, spaces, schools, corporates, homes, all of that.
All right, and to do this with us, today we actually have three guests who are joining us. And these are people who have lived, breathed, taught and transformed lives through theatre. So starting up first, we have Punita Roy. She's the Managing Trustee of the Yuva Ekta Foundation. She's worked with marginalized youth, children in conflict with the law, using theatre to nurture emotional intelligence and dignity.
Also with us is Rohit Ori. He's the former chairman and CEO of FCB Group India, but he never lost connection with the stagecraft and believes theatre can really shape the soul of our leadership, work culture as well. It can help us understand that. Also with us is Lushan Dubey. She really needs no introduction, needs an entire book to identify her body of work. She's an actor, director, producer, educator, theatre icon and plays several roles. She's also crossed the border, lives in Edinburgh, also in the Fringe Festival at Howard University. She's teaching kids, she has solo shows, she also has her own theatre company, Theatre World and Kids World. So welcome all three of you to the Breakfast Club. This is such a fascinating chat because when we think of theatre, we think of actors, production, stage, but we are talking about the stage of life. We are talking about how theatre is actually cultivating changes within us. And Rohit, can I start with you first? And understand why in the world of Excel sheets and presentations and P&Ls, theatre is playing such a good role today? Why are you such a proponent of it? And just for people joining us, Rohit is also part of this group of CXOs in Gurgaon. They meet once a month, very serious corporate honchos, as they say. But these people sit in a room once a month and read plays.
How lovely.
So I want to understand why, Rohit.
So, your two-part question. So I'll answer the first part. I think, theater has been part of my life, from school days. So it's something that is always, and I consider it my secret superpower in the world of advertising, because for me, what theater has really done, it's like if you think about advertising and you think about theater, at the heart of both is storytelling, right? So we're telling a story about a brand, we're telling a story about life and consumers. So in many ways, there's a deep connection there. And I think the way I look at it, that it's almost that every brief that we get, from a client on to create advertising is like a script, right? So in many ways, you're actually understanding what consumer you're actually talking to. So there's more than just seeing the consumer's profile on paper as education and socioeconomic classification. It's really about understanding the psyche and understanding what drives, motivates this consumer, and you're able to build deeper connections with consumers. So in many ways, I think advertising, theater, I believe they're so interconnected, and perhaps in my life, I think theater has really shaped the way I've grown up in advertising. So in many ways, everything I do in terms of articulating what a brand promises, how a consumer is to be connected with, is really kind of dictated by theater. And coming to your second question, which was really about why do corporate honchos are reading theater scripts. Actually, the interesting part of that piece is that most of us are so time poor. So in many ways, it's very difficult for us to kind of commit to a long term, saying, okay, the next 3 months we're going to be rehearsing, and nobody's traveling, nobody's, you have the time to actually do that. So the play reading is actually a beautiful way to stay in touch with something that we all passionate and we love. And it's not really that difficult to do, because you get the script about a week ago and you just read through the script and you're reading the script, right? So you stay connected with theater. It's a beautiful evening where you spend interacting or doing something you're passionate about versus idle gossip and it's the same thing all over again. But this is something we truly love, and it's a deeply enriching experience.
Creative, constructive use of time is kind of what it sounds like. Really constructive is the key there. Let's go over very quickly to Punita. Punita, if we could just ask you, one of the things that you do is you work extensively with children who are in conflict with the law. I just want to understand from you, what happens when you take theatre to young children who may not believe that they actually belong on stage? What's that transformation that you observe?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on. So, as Rohit said, the heart of theatre is storytelling. And I also came from, school, college, Barry John, tag, the conventional thing of picking up scripts and actually, having actors come in and fit into those roles. But, it was, I think, my introduction to the theatre of the absurd that actually shook me and got me to understand that it can be a very deep dialogue within, right?
Can I ask you to just explain to our audiences what Samuel Beckett Theatre of the Absurd actually is, just so we have that context?
Well, that's the Theatre of the Absurd. I mean, his Waiting for Godot was the masterpiece. it's a masterclass of really, I mean, it's exploring what, your internal dialogue. I mean, when you read the play or you watch the play, you're wondering what is this nonsense flying around, but it's leading to something. So it's breaking your conventional norms of, earlier we had act one, act two, act three. There was a graph, that a play normally took. This kind of really shook and, defied all those conventions. Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah.
actually get to the question.
Yeah.
So the other thing was that, when I was actually, I mean, around 40, I really, I was a filmmaker. I wanted to hang up my boots and say, I want to work with young people. So started working in schools, but for me, theater was a platform of social justice and social equity. So when we worked in schools, we would always create a platform where you had privileged kids coming in. So you had Sriram, Vasant Valley, etc. But we would get kids from a Salam Balak, an NGO that works with street kids. And together, you know, get them to articulate their realities, their stories. We never had a pre-scripted play that they had to then audition for. Auditions was completely, so then in an audition, it's competitive. Am I good
beautiful.
enough? That one's better. Here, you're actually getting a group that the NGO, the school, I mean, they sign up for the experience. It's a 1 month process. And then we start actually getting them to talk about themes that are of relevance to them, right? And today, a lot of it is about boundaries, safe spaces, gender identity, gender justice, etc., etc. So when we were working in these schools, I was actually invited by Justice Madan Lukul, who's an ex-Supreme Court judge who worked in juvenile justice, to say that would I work with a group of young people who are completely invisible, and who are totally, society has rejected them. And I was surprised because I've worked with street kids and I feel people are empathetic to street children. Then he introduced me to what we call them as young offenders. People call them as juvenile delinquents. I've actually co-authored a book with Inakshi Ganguly and Kalpana Purushottam to say that juvenile, not delinquent. It's not another name. It's not an acronym, juvenile and delinquents, So anyway, so he took me to a remand home in North Delhi, in Kingsway Camp. And when I walked into that home with the boys, honestly, I didn't see them any different from the other kids I worked with. So now it's been about 15 years from my first visit. I now run a foundation called the Yuva Ekta Foundation, and we are really passionately involved with, we call it expressive art therapy. Theater is an important component of it. And here you're getting the boys to start speaking. Boys who have been told that tum nikamme ho, tum bevkufu, I mean, you're useless, foolish, you'll never do anything with your lives. Reaching out to them with respect, giving them dignity and saying, please share with us, and not what you went through. We never get into what the case is. And believe me, these boys are in for heinous crime. I'm not going to go further into what heinous crime is.
Sure.
Yeah. So to get them to start then, I mean, we give them a topic, a theme, I mean, some very interesting things about gender roles in their home. And again, no judgment, just to start talking, sharing. Through those sessions, we then start getting a script together from their own stories. And they start fitting in. They're not playing other characters, they're playing themselves, or maybe characters in their homes that they're familiar with.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
And in that expression,
Incredible work, Panita, and it really tells you the beauty of the craft and how it can not just shape, like Rohit was saying, your boardrooms, but shape society at large. These are the people who will go on in the streets, and these are the people. Sounds like episode 3 of Adolescence to me, but I'm going to hold my horses on that one. Lucian has been patiently waiting, and she has done both of these things. She deals with corporates, she deals with students, she is a first-class actor and has academies, etc. of her own. When you look at the power of theatre today, when you see its reach that it's made, I remember you telling me that you now deal with management students who take up theatre as a subject because it brings them closer to their own realities. Do you have an example, like an experience that you can share with us to give us an insight into these sessions?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing children's theatre, as many know, for the past 32 years. I'm quite a fossil. I got into it when I was quite young. And I started working with corporates and with the business school, SOIL, School of Inspired Leadership, 15 years back. I've been teaching for 15 years, an intense course, which is literally 7 days. It starts very early in the morning, ends late in the evening. And what do I do in this? Who are the kind of people who come, and what do we actually do? These are basically students, they're anywhere from 75 to 100 to 120. I deal with this whole lot at one go. They're basically engineers and lawyers, most of them. 90 to 95% are engineers, many of them from South India. Many of them enter the classroom the first day, buried in their laptops, very, very anxious about the job that they have to get, the exams they have to complete before they get into the job hunting market. So as soon as they enter through that door, the first question I ask them is, do you feel that you're coming into studying and looking at a subject that is like, French fries compared to a steak or compared to a good tandoori chicken? And many of them look up and nod because they would rather be buried in their laptops than be doing something like theater. What is theater? Many don't even know what theater is. And so I start with, breaking the ice by telling them, I know this. I know you guys come here with this kind of feeling that what is this and what are we going to achieve? But believe me, at the end of 7 days, when you give a performance for the whole school, for the management school, you'll perform at the end of it, you'll know what you have gained. I don't need to tell you. So my 3 pegs of theater learning for them are, one, through all my years and experience of being a producer, director, script writer, actor myself, the one thing that I feel one has to get very close to in theater is to dispense with the misnomer of the word acting. It is feeling. It is feeling. It is what happens within you, your soul, because each one of us is locked. Each one of us has fears. Each one of us, what does one fear? One fears judgment. We are always conscious of judgment. If you ask yourself, how I look, what does the person think of me? Am I speaking correctly? Have I said the right thing? Has somebody, reacted this way? So you are locked. So what does theater do? It really unlocks all this. It puts you on the peg where you finally, so first is, of course, realizing it is not acting, it's a misnomer, it is feeling. And it's very difficult, mind you, to constantly be in touch with your inner feeling because you tend to sort of slip into performance. The minute you slip into performance, you actually are pulling yourself away from the reality, the truism, all right? Second is that they must go to a place where they become fearless. Third is to dispense with the fear of judgment. All this, provided you don't hurt anybody. Yeah, these are the 3 basic pegs. When you start feeling that you are really not toe dipping, you're knee dipping, you are immersing, you're actually absolutely embraced by all this. That is these 3 things that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you feel that, you get very impassioned about a subject like theater. You feel that, this is a part of you. So it's a real challenge to work at the management school with the management school students who come in, like I said, full of apprehension, trepidation about a subject like this, and then to tell them that, look, don't worry, you're going to experience something. At the end of it, you're going to share what you have experienced. We are going to create something. You are going to present it to an audience. And of course, as we go through the whole journey, we go through first honing in all the skills. Then we take, which are to do with diction, with voice, with give and take, natural give and take. I mean, while I'm talking to you, some of you are nodding, some of you are doing this, one of you may be smiling. That's the natural give and take. So that natural give and take, getting into mastering that in a very organic way, right? With diction in place, with clarity in place, with clarity of thinking in place, with joy, with happiness, with compassion, with team spirit. All these things happen when you go through all those skills, you go through those exercises, you go through games. I mean, you know, I've had students who come in who are very, very shy.
The theater of life. I think that would have been a very apt
theater of life,
theater
right?
of life. That would have been a very apt sort of way to do this. And you know, it just brings me back. This is so funny. It's just coming to me right now that one of my grandmothers got diagnosed with cancer, and during her treatment, she started doing theater. And I had almost forgotten how beautifully it helped her. She came out of it so nicely. And though nobody puts a finger to it, I understand now that it must have played a role. But I know Toya had a question.
No, I was just going to say, Lucian, to your point a little earlier, I wonder, are kids, because you've worked with all three stages of people, you know, kids, adolescents and adults, are kids more in access with this part of themselves? Do you find that adults have a more constricted time approaching that side of themselves? They take longer to open up? Because I feel like that would be the case.
You see, with kids, the beauty with kids is that they come in carte blanche. They come in with no apprehensions, many of them. They come in with an open slate. You put them, I mean, you're showing these huge musicals that I've done and, you know, directed, where very often I put little kids with middle school kids with adults, and sort of there is a medley of age groups, there's a medley of where they come from, their upbringing. Some speak only Hindi, some speaking English, some speak English. Sort of the guide has to be somebody who really is like a mother, all right, with children. Because the first thing children fear is they're scared, okay? So they're scared. So you have to dispense with that. So there's this very motherly kind of embracing feeling that the guide has to have, somebody like me, for instance. And many of these children who come, the difference between adults and children, I think, is that the children actually have lesser egos. So they come in without knowing what they have. Some of them are diamonds. I mean, you look at them and you say, my God, this kid would give an adult a run for their money. And this, I'm talking about children who are just innately, who just intrinsically just feel it. You don't even have to teach them something like acting because they just feel it.
Can I pick on that very quickly and ask Rohit a question? Rohit, you know, I've heard of this context that there is a split personality and there's a stage personality. I know of so many people who come and say that when they go on stage, something happens to them, something unlocks from within. And I've seen and heard of very shy people who go on stage and are just the biggest sunshine on the planet. Have you experienced something like that? I'm imagining a room full of corporates who are very, very strict and this Booba, Narayan Murthy sort of personality in office, but come to the reading and say, oh my God, this is, I should like let it go a little more.
Yeah, so you know, this I've seen this happen. Actually, you know, it's happened to me as well, right? So we do something called supper theater in Gurgaon, which is essentially, you know, murder over dinner. And what happens is that we invite a set of people, maybe about 100 people, to this play where the audience is not really the audience in the typical sense. They're part of the play as well, right? So it's scripted in a way that you know, a character is sitting at every table, and then the play actually unfolds over a dinner, etc., etc. And at this particular piece, a lot of people from my office had come, and they were thinking it's going to be, they're going to see me in pretty much the way they see me in office, right? So, and I was playing a politician who spoke with his mouth full of pan, and he had this very sleazy side to him,
Yeah.
and it was incredible actually, because after the show I went out and I changed and I came back in, and these two girls were standing there. They said, that politician guy, I mean, I don't see him here. So and I said, well, it's me. So they said,
Kudos.
oh, you speak
Kudos.
English. I said, yeah, I do speak English. And they said, oh, so the thing of, when you play a character, and I think a lot of it was what Lucian was saying as well, is you get so immersed in the character, the way the character actually is, and how that character behaves. So the whole thing of when you lose that acting and you kind of identify with the character in a way. And my wife always says, she's most surprised that I identify with these completely different characters who have no connection with what I am actually as an individual. It's just that I find it's like a beautiful escape, that you're into someone else's life, you're in playing somebody else who's completely unlike you, and I love that, because it's such a it's almost like you could live many lives in one life, right? So that's the beauty of, I think what
that's
theatre
absolutely beautiful, and I wish we had more time. I don't want this conversation to end, but perhaps we'll take it forward more. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us and sharing your perspective, and thank you so much for doing what you do. And Toya, we've got to go to a class now.
Yeah,
I'm
this has been really
kicked and
incredible.
pumped. I think the entire TBC team should go out and just do a class. Maybe
And feel. I thought that was so beautiful. The theatre is for feeling.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to be heading into a quick break, but we hope that you enjoyed that as much as we did. On the other side, because we aren't yet done with covering Theatre Day, on the other side, we're going to be meeting someone very, very special. Coming up after the break, the woman behind the frame, the actor, curator and force. We're going to be having you meet Shylaja Chetlur. Beyond performing, she has been building. So you recognize her from the screen, but she has been building cinema, theatre, creation spaces across, and we'll be talking to her a little bit about her story.
लाल रंग इसका
big statement that has been made by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, who has now said that people of all religions are safe in the state, and that if Hindus are safe, Muslims in Uttar Pradesh are safe too. He was speaking exclusively to news agency ANI, where Yogi Adityanath asserted that as a yogi, he wishes for everyone's happiness and highlighted the tolerant nature of Hindus, saying that a Muslim family would feel safe among hundreds of Hindu families. However, 50 Hindu families might not feel safe among hundreds of Muslim families, and that Bangladesh, Afghanistan and Pakistan are examples of the same. Meanwhile, the opposition has now hit out at Yogi Adityanath, calling this an attempt to divert attention from real issues. Let's listen in to the latest war of words first.
100 हिंदू परिवारों के बीच में 100 हिंदू परिवारों के बीच में एक मुस्लिम परिवार सबसे सुरक्षित रहता है। उसको इसके पर्व और त्योहारों को, उसको अपने सभी मजहबी कर्मों को करने के लिए, या जिस मत और मजहब या संप्रदाय या सेक्ट का अनुयायी होगा, उसको उस परंपरा के अनुसार अपने सारे धार्मिक मान्यताओं या उपासना विधि को पूरी स्वतंत्रता होती है। लेकिन मैं कहता हूँ 100 परिवारों के बीच में, एक हिंदू की बात तो दूर करिए, 100 मुस्लिम परिवारों के बीच में 50 हिंदू सुरक्षित रह सकता है क्या? नहीं रह सकता। अब बांग्लादेश आपके सामने उदाहरण है, इससे पहले पाकिस्तान उदाहरण था, अफगानिस्तान में क्या हुआ था। ये चीजें दिखाती हैं और होशियारी यही है कि कहीं धुआं उड़ रहा हो या किसी को ठोकर लग रही हो तो हमें ठोकर लगे इससे पहले हम संभल जाएं। उत्तर प्रदेश में मुसलमान सबसे ज़्यादा सुरक्षित है, सबसे ज़्यादा सुरक्षित है। अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो वह भी सुरक्षित है। अगर दंगे यहाँ यूपी में होते थे जो 2017 के पहले, अगर हिंदू की दुकान जलती थी तो मुसलमान की भी जलती थी, हिंदू का घर जलता था तो मुसलमान की भी जलती थी। और 17 के बाद से दंगे बंद हुए। अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो मुसलमान भी सुरक्षित है।
हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जी ये बताएं उनकी कुर्सी सुरक्षित है कि नहीं है? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि हिंदू मुसलमान की जो अब सुरक्षा की भावना जाग रही है, कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि उनकी कुर्सी डगमगा रही हो? याद होगा जब उन्होंने एक बार योग किया था, कैसे एक टांग पे डगमगा रहे थे। कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि उनकी कुर्सी डगमगा रही हो, इसलिए वो कह रहे हो कि हमारे सब भाईचारा बहुत अच्छा है।
प्रदेश में हिंदू सुरक्षित है तभी मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहेंगे। नहीं, तो हिंदू भी सुरक्षित रहे और मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहे, सभी भारतीय नागरिक सुरक्षित रहे, ये सरकार की प्राथमिकताओं में से है। और मोदी जी का सबका साथ सबका विकास सबके लिए प्रयास और सबका विश्वास का जो अभियान है वो इसी संदर्भ में है भी। और मैं समझता हूँ इसी उद्घोष का उन्होंने अपने शब्दों में इसका प्रयोग किया है। ये बात सही है कि देश में बहुसंख्यक और अल्पसंख्यक किसी भी देश में ये विरासत होते हैं और इनकी एक दूसरे के प्रति समझदारी ये आवश्यकता होती है। और ये बात सही है कि अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो जाहिर सी बात है कि मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहेगा और मुस्लिम सुरक्षित है तो हिंदू भी खुश रहेगा। इसमें गलत बात कौन सी है?
ऐसा है कि ये खाली ध्यान भटकाने वाली ही बात करेंगे, क्योंकि ये आज भी नहीं बता पाएंगे कि जितने इन्होंने MOU साइन किए थे वो कितने धरातल पे उतरे हैं। अगर आप इनके मॉडल को देख लेंगे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट के लिए तो सब इस पे हंसी उड़ाएंगे कि किस तरह का ये डेवलपमेंट मॉडल है जहां लाखों करोड़ रुपए के MOU साइन होते हैं और धरातल पर नहीं उतरते हैं। और ये खाली अब मैनेजमेंट और मीडिया के माध्यम से अपनी छवि को सुधारना चाहते हैं।
Let me take this across to my colleague Arun Dhanta, who's now with us on the broadcast. Arun, this is a far cry from when Yogi Adityanath had said, "Batenge to katenge." What explains this change of stance?
Well, see, Yogi Adityanath is talking about the inclusive development, and in fact, he's saying that his governance and his government have been working in that everybody, whether it is a Hindu, Muslim, or any other community, they are getting all the benefits of the state government, and for the state government, everybody is equal. But at the same time, he also says this. In fact, make that comparison when he says that if a Muslim family stays amongst the 100 Hindu families, they are protected. But if it happens otherwise, when you have 50 Hindu families staying at a place where you have, more than 100 Muslim families, can they be safe? So I think on one side he's talking about
Welcome back. Here we are with our person of interest, but we're keeping the theme of Theatre Day pretty much alive in this segment as well, because we have this guest with us. She's a celebrated actor and of Indian television, founding one of the most respected film appreciation platforms. Meet Shylaja Chetlur, whose journey has been one deeply rooted in the arts and powered by purpose.
She's an accomplished actor, filmmaker, and entrepreneur. She began her on-screen career with iconic shows like Marmadesam, a Tamil mystery anthology television series, and Rudra Veenai, a Tamil mystery suspense television series. She went on to appear on major films like Enthiran. You've seen her face and you recognize her, but her impact actually goes far beyond her recognizable roles. Back in 2012, she founded Cinema Rendezvous. It's a film club that has since grown into a hub for cinephiles, students, and creators alike, hosting powerful conversations around cinema and society. Her roots, though, in theatre.
And she's also the driving force behind the Bala Kailasham Memorial Award, which honors excellence in documentary filmmaking, with social impact spotlighting stories that change inspire and move us, whether it's through her acting, her curation of her advocacy for the arts as a tool for transformation. Shylaja has consistently championed the belief that theatre and performance are not just for the privileged few, but for the common man as a way to heal, to grow, to connect with the world.
On World Theatre Day, we are thrilled to have her to explore its power to shape personality, spark self-discovery and bring people a little bit closer to themselves. Please welcome her onto the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the intro.
It is so lovely to have you here this morning. Shylaja, can we just, because it's World Theatre Day, we want to just start by asking you, can you take us back to when theatre first came into your life and tell us a little bit about the impact, the change, how you felt it change you, how you identified? Take us back to then first.
That's a nice question to start World Theatre Day on, because I immediately had a flash of memory of my mom getting a bunch of my friends together when we must have been in 5th or 6th standard, and all of us from the street coming together to put up a play, which is about retirement, by the way. And so I think practicing in the terrace. So that was informally something. But in school, I remember we started something called the Dominic's Reach Out program, and through that we did a street play. So wherein that is the first time we associated with people who were from Calcutta. So we were trained by them, and the theme was about the cracker factory in Sivakashi. So I think this kind of theatre brought in a social awareness about the society and everything. These are my earliest memories of practicing theatre.
How wonderful. Okay.
Lovely. But ma'am, you know, when we think of theatre, or to a general audience, when we think of theatre, they take it, many still take it as one step before you get into the movies or you get into something big. But today, in our conversation before the break as well, we discovered how theatre is actually part of everyday life. It sort of takes you out of the mundane, and so many people are practicing it. Is there this one misconception about theatre that you perhaps want to debunk today?
Yeah, that number one, that theatre is the first step to facing the camera, or not necessarily. I know a lot of people, even I, when I was very busy doing television, consciously would do theatre. Because television or films probably pay you more, but theatre is another thing which I think as an artist, you get a high out of it. You find a lot of other meanings. So that's one thing. And number two, I don't think theatre or any kind of acting is just for actors, whether for the camera or for the stage. I think it's for life. I think it improves your communication skills, and which is very, very important today in interpersonal relationships, including very close romantic ties. Because with more women being aware, you can't stand with the whole thing. Man doesn't communicate, a woman talks more. That gives an excuse. I don't know this, so I can't do this. So I think if you did theatre, what is nice is that you really know to express things. You understand body language, you understand stance with the body, look in the eye. You understand yourself more. It's very introspective.
Wonderful. Can we just ask you, Shylaja, so, you know, our producer Ashriya was very passionate. Our team, in fact, was really passionate about the fact that you were coming on, and they were talking a lot about Cinema Rendezvous in particular.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you what it takes to run a space that centers culture in India. And the reason I ask you that is because obviously we're in a time right now when cultural centers are celebrated, but there are few. And sometimes, you know, those centers of theatre, those centers of art, they come into focus. So I just want to ask you, how do we create an atmosphere in which such places thrive, more such spaces are built? Because they can only help the millions and millions across our country.
And don't attract a particular kind of people, it's for all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you take, okay, my interest in film festivals grew, international cinema grew, because when you grow up as a child, I was exposed to certain things. My dad had a communist ideology, then coming from Kerala. And then he exposed me to certain kind of big Western films. And you knew about cowboy films, or you know about Guns of Navarone, and just few things like that. But there's a whole world of other cinema. When I got to know this, when I was hosting in Vijay TV, I was hosting a show called Cinema Car and Coffee. And then you start reading about all this, and that interest grew. So I went to study film appreciation in FTI Pune. And then from 2009, I was working with the Chennai International Film Festival, part of the organizing committee. To actress director Suhasini is very passionate about it, and she had brought in a whole lot of friends to help out with the festival. So I think that that grew. So there was a search, there was a satisfaction in seeing that cinema can be community building, society building, making you understand yourself and the world, and that it is one of the easiest ways in which you can forge friendship. So then I wasn't getting satisfied with just watching films. I think it is about taking it and having conversations around the central theme and the other layered nuances in a film. So that's how in 2012, and two of my best friends who are my fellow trustees, the Cinema Rendezvous Trust runs the film club. So then there was another hotelier friend with whom I used to talk about this passion. She said, you should start it. So three of us got in as trustees. And then we started this because I found our friendship was based on the conversations that centered around cinema. So sometimes you talk about so many things. You speak about, I mean, you can have a stage and speak about inclusivity and all that. But when you see it set on a story, on real people, their emotions, which people, take for example, a film like Bombay done by Mani Ratnam, the cinematic language. Or if you take Mari Selvaraj's film here called Vare, which was recently, I think you understand other perspectives, whether it's about a Hindu-Muslim conflict, and you can still stick on to any idea you have, but then you have heard different viewpoints and perspectives, and you see them from a very human angle. So that became the basis, and so 2012 we started this. It's not been easy because to consistently do something, and it's something which takes in a lot of effort and has no monetary benefit. So you can only work with passion around these things. But I think the big fun has been for people to know technical stuff a little more, and also to have conversations around themes centered around the society, contemporary society, or to talk about old things and see their relevance to today. I think cinema gives you all that opportunity. A film club opens up a lot of those things. And there are various kinds of film clubs. You go to a festival, you might find a lot of assistant directors, aspiring filmmakers. But there is a whole big audience, which I think become a very important part of this whole ecosystem of film production, the end consumer. So I think connecting with them of different age groups, you can't nullify whether they are like retired or middle age or young. Each thing has a different energy. So I have fun putting all this together. So it's a nice rendezvous.
Rendezvous indeed, and I think what we established today is clearly that theatre does make you very one with self. It does make you very authentic. And in a world where people are getting more and more closed in their mindset, in this hyper-connected digital world where we don't speak as much, talk as much, I think theatre is a great tool to actually bring back society, which is what brings me to the question, ma'am, of what do you think is required? We're talking on World Theatre Day. What do you think is required to ensure that this community thrives, that theatre for all actually is not just a concept, but is a tool available for everybody to stay humane?
I've always felt cinema and theatre should be part of the school curriculum. And yes, we're all speaking about adolescence, you know, on the OTT platform and several things. I think it's very important, especially in this digital times, to keep people connected to themselves and to the other person next to them in realistic ways also. So I think making it a subject, I would really, if somebody were to come up, I think policymakers should be approached to make cinema part of the curriculum. They can be curated specifically. I think children-related films can be curated, as well as theatrical performances with different themes. And I think these school excursions and picnics should be centered around these experiences. Like imagine somebody from Uttar Pradesh, a class coming down to South India in one of the outskirts of Tamil Nadu, to Chennai or somewhere, and learning a little about Kuttu tradition. One of our friends, Shashikant Anattachari, is doing major research and presenting in IIT about the Mahabharatam Kuttu tradition, which happens in different villages of Tamil Nadu. So it's like the same story you're performing and again, and it opens up in layers. You understand so much about the society around you and yourself. So I think if children are involved in this And if there's a lot of intercultural exchange like this, travel centered around this, like you go to Kerala, you see the folk tradition there is very alive and strong. So I think getting back to those roots will be something fantastic for our Indian society.
And also make us more tolerant, I guess.
Yeah, and I constantly think, like you have in Broadway, having permanent theaters which are screening, I mean, which are having plays running, stage shows running constantly. I think it'll be wonderful. Yeah, even in Disney, when you go, you see Alice in Wonderland or, you know, Snow White and all those things performed in such fantastic backgrounds with fantastic actors. I think it will also give employment to a lot of junior artists who sometimes can't make a living because cinema as an ecosystem doesn't support. When television opened, it gave life to a lot of actors. I think if the government came up to have regular spaces where productions are put up. I mean, it's lovely that Bombay is having the space by the Ambani family. And, you know, like high-end things like that, it attracts tourism. It tells your stories. It brings about a lot of cultural exchange,
Shylaja, it's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you. And thank you for shining a light on what's still needed in the journey ahead. All right, we hadn't yet spoken about the infra needed. Now we've spoken about that too. Let's head into something entirely different.
All right, let's talk about cars and bikes now. Quite a shift
of focus,
Yeah, shifting gears, I was going to say, on this story. But let's talk about sedans. They say sedans are dying, but try telling that to Honda Amaze and Maruti Dzire. Both are still going strong and have loyal fan bases. So we put them to the test and also figured out side by side in the real world conditions, how exactly do they fare?
All right, this is Overdrive with the verdict. Take a look.
Hearing over and over again that sedans are dead, but it seems like no one told that to these two. The Maruti Suzuki Dzire sold over 1.67 lakh units in 2024, and Honda's gone to the trouble of creating an all-new Amaze. Now both these cars are very new and very popular, so it's only fair to ask which of these is the best. The Dzire and Amaze are within millimeters of each other. It may not look like it, but the Dzire is 25 mm taller, which shows that Maruti Suzuki has done a pretty good job of creating a proportionate shape of this small sub 4 meter footprint. The Amaze, on the other hand, has quite some presence with the big upright grille and large boxy lighting. The Amaze's shrunk city theme makes it a touch more upright than ideal, but there is a reason to this, as we will see later. The Amaze has 9 mm more ground clearance than the Dzire, 172 mm, which always helps. Now with the Dzire, you get 382 litres of boot space. That's not too much more than what you used to get with the last gen model. And you notice that the lip is quite low. So if I have a big heavy bag, I can quite easily lift it up, and a few of them for your family road trip will fit. But it's the Amaze that is genuinely more practical in this regard. At least you get 416 litres. And if you just look at it, it's much deeper. Overall, the space is much wider. Yes, both of them have these wheel wells that come in the way, but otherwise, this is the better package for a family road trip. And you also have a wider opening. And another nice touch is that you get padding here on the lid, which you don't see very often, even in some bigger sedans. Now, this is a bit odd. With the Dzire, you can't actually open the boot, even though there is a request sensor. What you do need is the key in your hand. Only then the boot opens. But with the Amaze, there's no such problem. You can just open it like in any other car. The more practical space does mean that the Amaze seems to end more abruptly, although even at the rear it has more presence with the large city-like lamps. The Desire's better proportions are also continued here. Now both these cars try to give you that upmarketish sedan experience within the cabin too. And at first glance, I think the Dzire does it slightly better. You notice that with the more vibrant feeling that's in the cabin. So you have a bit more texture here, a bit more user-wearing sort of finishes. For example, this forward, there's a bit more silver here than in the Amaze. So yeah, you feel like you're in a more expensive car at first glance. But having said that, you have that tough, functional Japanese sense from both these cars. And the Honda sort of enhances that to an extent with the switchgear. For example, the AC vents have a bit more heft to them, same with the buttons on the steering wheel. So in that sense, the Amaze does better. And yeah, even the plastics, while they do seem of a tougher grade in the Amaze, the panel gaps itself, I think the Maruti does it a little bit better. They're a bit more consistent in the Dzire. The Amaze's part digital instrumentation feels quite a few steps ahead of the simple analog dials in the Dzire. The large screen and steering mounted buttons make it much easier to navigate on the move. Conversely, the small MID in the Dzire uses old school stocks and is often locked out through alerts like the turn-by-turn navigation. The Amaze also has a more configurable trip computer. The situation is reversed with the touchscreen. The Amaze's 8-inch screen feels like it's from a couple of generations ago. It's slow to respond, the display lacks brightness and contrast and catches glare easily. You also don't get a wireless phone mirroring function. The Desire's 9-inch unit makes life much easier with the wireless function, sharper display, and is much more responsive and thoughtfully laid out. As you might expect, it's the Honda that is slightly more practical. The door bins hold stuff easier. The wireless charger is better placed. You have a bit more space for you in the central sort of tunnel. The Dzire may be smaller inside, but it makes up for this by offering some popular features like a sunroof and the more modern screen. Now with both these cars, very often you or your family members will be spending time in the back seat. And in that scenario, if you're traveling 4 up very often, then the Amaze really does score some points over the Dzire. We just tried sitting 3 abreast and it was much easier to fit in the Amaze than in the Dzire. The Amaze, just aside from its slightly wider bench, it also has slightly nicer contouring. So even though it's quite flat, you do feel that the cushioning is slightly firmer. There's a bit more thigh support, so you will be more comfortable. And then just generally in terms of its volume, it feels more spacious. It has a little bit more knee room than in the Dzire, so you can sort of spread out a bit more. The footwells seem a little bit wider, so to speak, and even the central hump is slightly lower. Similarly, you have a larger window and the roof just feels like it's of a slightly higher height. So overall, it's a brighter, more spacious feeling in the Amaze. Now both will give you a center armrest. And I just feel that this has a typical Honda thing of how it rests directly on the seat. So yeah, for me, this is a bit too low. In that sense, the Dzire has a slightly more comfortable armrest, but you get a third headrest with the Amaze. Now, just like in the front, you do find that the Amaze is a bit lacking in terms of features at the back. The sound quality isn't that great of the music system, which is one thing. And you also find that you don't get any charging ports. So there's just a 12-volt socket, which is going to be a bit of a pain in this day and age.
दुनिया का सब
Big statement that has been made by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, who has now said that people of all religions are safe in the state and that if Hindus are safe, Muslims in Uttar Pradesh are safe too. He was speaking exclusively to news agency ANI, where Yogi Adityanath asserted that as a yogi, he wishes for everyone's happiness and highlighted the tolerant nature of Hindus, saying that a Muslim family would feel safe among hundreds of Hindu families. However, 50 Hindu families might not feel safe among hundreds of Muslim families, and that Bangladesh, Afghanistan and Pakistan are examples of the same. Meanwhile, the opposition has now hit out at Yogi Adityanath, calling this an attempt to divert attention from real issues. Let's listen in to the latest war of words first.
100 हिंदू परिवारों के बीच में 100 हिंदू परिवारों के बीच में एक मुस्लिम परिवार सबसे सुरक्षित रहता है। उसको इसके पर्व और त्योहारों को, उसको अपने सभी मजहबी कर्मों को करने के लिए, या जिस मत और मजहब या संप्रदाय या सेक्ट का अनुयायी होगा, उसको उस परंपरा के अनुसार अपने सारे धार्मिक मान्यताओं या उपासना विधि को पूरी स्वतंत्रता होती है। लेकिन मैं कहता हूँ 100 परिवारों के बीच में एक हिंदू की बात तो दूर करिए, 100 मुस्लिम परिवारों के बीच में 50 हिंदू सुरक्षित रह सकता है क्या? नहीं रह सकता। अब बांग्लादेश आपके सामने उदाहरण है, इससे पहले पाकिस्तान उदाहरण था, अफगानिस्तान में क्या हुआ था। ये चीजें दिखाती हैं और होशियारी यही है कि कहीं धुआं उड़ रहा हो या किसी को ठोकर लग रही हो तो हमें ठोकर लगे इससे पहले हम संभल जाएं। उत्तर प्रदेश में मुसलमान सबसे ज़्यादा सुरक्षित है, सबसे ज़्यादा सुरक्षित है। अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो वह भी सुरक्षित है। अगर दंगे यहाँ यूपी में होते थे जो 2017 के पहले, अगर हिंदू की दुकान जलती थी तो मुसलमान की भी जलती थी, हिंदू का घर जलता था तो मुसलमान की भी जलती थी। और 17 के बाद से दंगे बंद हुए। अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो मुसलमान भी सुरक्षित है।
हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जी ये बताएं उनकी कुर्सी सुरक्षित है कि नहीं है? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि हिंदू मुसलमान की जो अब सुरक्षा की भावना जाग रही है, कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि उनकी कुर्सी डगमगा रही हो? याद होगा जब उन्होंने एक बार योग किया था, कैसे एक टांग पे डगमगा रहे थे। कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि उनकी कुर्सी डगमगा रही हो, इसलिए वो कह रहे हो कि हमारे सब भाईचारा बहुत अच्छा है।
प्रदेश में हिंदू सुरक्षित है तभी मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहेंगे। नहीं, देखो हिंदू भी सुरक्षित रहे और मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहे, सभी भारतीय नागरिक सुरक्षित रहे, ये सरकार की प्राथमिकताओं में से है। और मोदी जी का सबका साथ सबका विकास सबके लिए प्रयास और सबका विश्वास का जो अभियान है वो इसी संदर्भ में है भी। और मैं समझता हूँ इसी उद्घोष का उन्होंने अपने शब्दों में इसका प्रयोग किया है। ये बात सही है कि देश में बहुसंख्यक और अल्पसंख्यक किसी भी देश में ये विरासत होते हैं और इनकी एक दूसरे के प्रति समझदारी ये आवश्यकता होती है। और ये बात सही है कि अगर हिंदू सुरक्षित है तो जाहिर सी बात है कि मुस्लिम भी सुरक्षित रहेगा और मुस्लिम सुरक्षित है तो हिंदू भी खुश रहेगा। इसमें गलत बात कौन सी है?
ऐसा है कि ये खाली ध्यान भटकाने वाली ही बात करेंगे, क्योंकि ये आज भी नहीं बता पाएंगे कि जितने इन्होंने MOU साइन किए थे वो कितने धरातल पे उतरे हैं। अगर आप इनके मॉडल को देख लेंगे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट के लिए तो
All right, welcome back. The stage is set, leaders are ready. News 18 Rising Bharat Summit 2025 is going to be bringing you thought-provoking conversations, groundbreaking ideas, and the voices shaping tomorrow at the Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi.
Now, that QR code that you see on your screen, to attend these really thought-provoking conversations, all you have to do is scan it and get your pass. It's on the 8th and 9th of April, so book your slots right away. All right, with that, we are gonna say bye-bye to Thursday and hoping to see you back tomorrow on Friday, where we're discussing adolescence. My gut is still like churning after having watched it, but I'm sure so is yours. So if you have thoughts, etc., there'll be feedback and lines are open for you to sort of join in and tell us what you thought of Adolescence as a series.
Also, if you haven't watched it, there's enough time. It's only 4 hours of your day. So get on it now. Join us for the discussion tomorrow.
Keep some ice cream in the fridge, just like big help after the show.
All right.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
से